Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you, coming at you with some Mathmech action here just before the new pack ends up dropping in Master Duel. So, yeah, Mathmech, it's definitely been a pretty long-standing favorite of mine, and I've actually heard some people saying that Mathmech is even a pretty good matchup against Tenpai. So that's kind of the thing, right, about Tenpai that I've seen people saying. Of course, a lot of people have been kind of dooming about it, like, Tenpai in best of one, that'll be ridiculous. But, like, on the other hand, I've also seen a lot of people say, like, oh, well, with Tenpai being so good or so popular, you'll be able to play a lot of these going first decks that set up really, really strong negations, right? Like, I've seen people talk about Drytron, about how, like, Drytron stocks are up once Tenpai comes in because, you know, Tenpai will let the Drytron player go first and then set up and then you're good. So it does kind of make me wonder, like, how bad Tenpai actually will be in best of one, if, like, because of course, again, there's people dooming about it, but, like, if people are hyping up literally, like, any, I don't know about literally any, but, like, if they're just hyping up turn one combos in general, then, yeah, I think any deck that can set up very well, especially through hand traps, can definitely have a very good shot against Tenpai. But, of course, we'll have to, you know, see what happens when the pack actually drops. But you know, if you want to talk about a deck that can play very well through hand traps, then Mathmech here is definitely one of the better options, right? With Circular still at 3, and hopefully probably not going to 1 anytime soon, or 0. It's really not something that needs to happen, honestly. I think that Mathmech is, I mean, we talked about this last time, right? Mathmech is like, even before Tenpai drops, Mathmech is like the 10th best deck in Master Duel, right? So it's really not in a state where it's terribly overpowered or anything like that. But one change I think notably that I have made to the build here isn't actually in the extra deck. Mirror Logic Aggregator is back in. For quite a while there, we were focusing on the pack bit Ignister, or not focusing on it, but we were trying out the Enigmaster pack bit over the Mirror Logic Aggregator. And I definitely did this for more than just the season when this card came out. I like to do that when I'm testing changes in a build, right? I'll test it on ladder, like, over the course of multiple weeks, because if you do just like one play session with the change and you're like, well, it never came up, so I'll swap it back, it's like, you know, one play session I don't think is a strong enough sample size. So having played the pack bit for a couple of seasons, it's been fine. There's even been like 1 or 2 instances where I've actually synchro summoned for this card in Mathmech, but ultimately I do think that the aggregator is probably slightly better. The negate effect, even though you do have to time it well, is still, I think, very, very strong. And it's really not terribly difficult to time, right? Of course, the whole thing about Mirror Logic Aggregator is that its effect is going to activate on a separate chain from the one that Terahertz activates on that sends it to the graveyard. However, that still is able to hit a lot of things. Any monster or face-up spell or trap card that has, well, not trap card, but any face-up monster or spell card that has a spell speed 1 activated effect, right? That can be used to negate with the Mirror Logic Aggregator. If your opponent is activating a card effect that would summon a monster that has an effect you want to negate on summon, then you can simply chain the Terahertz effect to the card that's summoning, right? A good example of that would be if you're up against Branded and they're going second and they activate Fusion Deployment, right? I will chain Terahertz to that because they're probably trying to summon out Albaz and fuse away the Terahertz. So what you can do is you can chain the Terahertz to the activation of Fusion Deployment, then the Albaz is summoned and activates on summon on the next chain link, which is also where the Mirror Logic Aggregator will activate. And also because your opponent is turn player, their monster effects will always hit the chain link first, and then Aggregator will go on as a later chain link, which means when the chain resolves, the Aggregator will activate first. So it even works out in your favor. Again, I can see how it might seem like the timing for this might be a little bit weird, but really, as long as you have a fairly basic understanding of how chains work, and just keep in mind that, of course, effects cannot interrupt a chain link, then it's not a terribly difficult card to end up using. But For the main deck, I think the one card difference that I made is that I took out one of 2 Triple Tactics talent for just a single Droll Lockbird. Although I will say that with the release of Tenpai, that could very likely be Ghost Ogre moving forward. Ghost Ogre, of course, being quite strong against Tenpai, and Mathmech being a deck where you have room for quite a few hand traps. Ghost Ogre does even let you bridge with Small World quite well, as it is a light monster, which is nice. It, of course, has stats that are relevant to stuff like... well, not Ash Blossom because they have the same attack and defense, but like the, the Dotscaper with the 0 attack, or so on and so forth. So, but yeah, in a lot of builds where I'm playing Triple Tactics talent, I've gone down from 2 copies to just 1, because as much as I really, really like drawing this card, I love Triple Tactics talent. I've had more than my fair share of games where I have 2 just kind of sitting dead in hand. Because if one isn't live, then the second one is definitely not going to be live anytime soon. So going down to 1 copies in a lot of decks. And for the current pre-Tenpai meta, Droll I think is quite good. I think, of course, Droll is still going to be good moving forward. And, of course, Ghost Ogre is still good now pre-Tenpai. Ghost Ogre has actually been quite good even pre-Tenpai. But, of course, with the release of Tenpai, is expected to get even better. So... But yeah, like I said, a lot of people say that the reason, or I guess the people I've heard saying this, right? People have said that Mathmech is good going into Tenpai because you get to set up not only the Terahertz with the Spell Trap Negate as well as the Aggregator Negate, but you also set up the Super Factorial as well, which can set up the Omni Negate and also get the Hand Rip in, right? But at the same time, again, like I'm saying, if people think that, like, oh, any solid turn 1 setup, because I don't think Mathmech is like that extraordinary of a turn 1 setup, right? For modern Yu-Gi-Oh, I think it's like slightly above average for what most decks can set up, but really not far at all above. But I think that if that's considered to be, a good setup against Tenpai, like Mathmech's in board, then I think a lot of decks are actually going to be pretty solid going into the Tenpai matchup. Like, again, we'll just have to see, right? We'll just have to see how things end up shaking out here. So... yeah, given that this is Mathmech and it's like been the same list we've been on for quite some time, I don't think I'm going to bother reading it card by card. Instead, we'll just go ahead and start taking a look at these duels. Okay, so our first opponent's going to be on Sword Soul. They're taking the first turn here. This is a going second game, which is one of the reasons why I'm leading with it here. And Sword Soul is, of course, as always, as ever, still a little bit scary sometimes, but... not as much when you open a couple of hand traps. I will say, I got kind of, oh, I thought this was the game where they led with Emergence. I'm sorry, I was about to say, I got lucky with them leading Emergence because Ash Blossom was useful. That must be a different Sword Soul game I'm thinking of. In fact, I think it was when I was playing Centurion, but... Put us on Golden Sword Soul. You don't always see that in Sword Soul decks, but I will gladly respond to the Long Gone with the Max C here. Now, the opponent's going to chain with a Gamma. I am absolutely going to use this Ash Blossom to stuff that Gamma back in their hand, and this is actually extremely good for multiple reasons, right? One, the Ash Blossom on the Gamma here, of course, lets my Max C resolve. Two, them not having Gamma and Driver on the field means they don't get a free Love Light Synchro, which in this matchup matters a lot, like a lot, right? 3, after this chain resolves, they're going to have a monster on the board, meaning that the Gamma is not useful for the rest of the game. So, extremely good to have that Ash Blossom there. Having all 3 copies of Circular is not the most lucky, but we have multiple extenders and the Imperm here, so I'm really not going to complain about this hand at all. Of course, we're going to lead by Imperming their Qixing Long Yan, that way it doesn't mess us up into our combo line here. Gonna Circular send a Sigma, and then summon out the Sigma, activating Circular Effect to add the Super Factorial. Now, normally on turn 2, you would add the spell card, the equation, and not the Super Fact. But the reason that I went for Super Factorial here is because if my opponent had, like, multiple hand traps other than the Gamma, because again, it's not live, to stop me here, like, Valor Nib or Ash Nib or something like that, or Maxi into Nib, then we have a follow-up play with a Super Factorial. Again, I already have multiple extenders, so I don't anticipate that I'll need the Mathmech equation here. Go to activate the Splash Range, opponent is going to end up having an effect Valor for that, but as I just got done saying, we have multiple extenders, so it does not matter at all. Especially going second, you don't need to do a full combo. All you need to do is OTK. And this deck has multiple ways to OTK with just the starters themselves. But with an extender, you can play through pretty much one hand trap per extender, with the exception of Nibiru, of course. But, like, I'm trying to think. I don't even think I've used my normal summon here, so, like, let's say my opponent dropped a Nibiru right here, because this was actually something I was thinking about as I was playing out this combo line. What am I going to do if my opponent drops Nib in a spot like this, right? Because we're not playing Link Spider. Instead, we're playing the second Splash Mage. But what we could do here, if we got nibbed, is we haven't normal summoned. So we could normal summon Circular, Special Summon Edition, link those into G-Golem, bring back Transcode, and then battle. That right there is 34 minus 19 is 15. 15 plus 34 is 48. So to leave my opponent at 3,200. If I really wanted to, I could then link into Heat Soul to get some extra draws while setting up Super Factorial and having Ash Blossom. Well, no, I actually wouldn't Heat Soul after battling over because they have the Gamma in hand, so never mind on that. But my point is, we would still have a way to deal massive damage, if not OTK, and have multiple points of interaction on their turn, even in the face of their Gamma. So, always planning for your opponent's hand traps, even if they don't end up having them, is of course crucial to any game, but especially Mathmech. Because that's half of being able to play through and around hand traps so well, is that kind of planning. Also, when you're activating Terahertz, make sure that you're waiting until damage calculation to minimize what your opponent can respond with, not only because of Terahertz's ability to negate any monster effect your opponent activates during the battle phase, but also because there's only so many kinds of effects you can play during the damage step. So, alright, there we go. There's that first duel. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. Alright, this one's going to be a Mathmech mirror match. The opponent is also on Mathmech. They're playing Ghost Spells, which is quite good. I actually did consider that over the Droll. The thing that makes Ghost Spell so good is that it's not only a good hand trap, of course, but in Mathmech in particular, it can stop a lot of graveyard hate effects, like notably the Bystials, right? Because we have the D-Save Worm for Callby, but the Bystials are another problem. And I will say the Bystials are pretty decently popular in this meta because of both Dragon Link and how good they are against decks like Yubel. So, but here we have a pretty decently typical turn 1 combo line here. You'll note that I led the Signet Minding pitching the Veiler. I didn't really want to do it that way, but this is actually kind of one of the reasons why I did it this way, is because I wanted to have access to the Defensor for my normal summon, as well as the Subtraction for additional extender if my opponent has hand traps here. Now, by normal summoning the Defensor, I can actually not only finish my full combo line anyway, but on top of that, I also get to make the Heat Soul in addition to Terahertz. But if my opponent, for example, has an Ash Blossom against the Defensor effect here, I still want the Subtraction to be able to make sure I can fully combo out, right? Again, half of being able to play through all of these hand traps is planning accordingly for said hand traps. So, I will say the one hand trap that Tenpai could have that would pretty decently screw Mathmech over is Shifter. I think there are hands where you can make Terahertz under Shifter, but then you can't send the D-Save Worm or Aggregator to the graveyard, so it's kind of moot anyway, right? Alright, so bringing back the Splash Mage. Note that I've not activated Splash Mage's effect yet. I like to save activating Splash Mage for as late as possible on the quote-unquote extended turn 1 combo line where you end on Terahertz and Heat Soul for after Splash Mage is brought back with Transcode Talker, right? Because if I got like nibbed or something, or gamut or whatever, and I was able to make a Splash Mage later, then I would still have the effect to use later on in the turn, of course. So you also note that I sent the diameter off of the Terahertz, so that's why, like, especially nowadays, even more so than in the past, it doesn't really matter if you get hand trapped in the middle of the Mathmech part of your combo line, because even if you didn't set up the diameter by normal summoning it, you can always just send it with Terahertz later. So during the draw phase, I'm going to draw with Heat Soul. I'm also going to send the D-Save Worm off of Terahertz. Now, of course, if I had been able to send Terahertz last turn, I would wait on the, or send D-Save Worm last turn, I would wait on the Terahertz to go for the Aggregator. So, opponent's going to move to battle phase. I'm going to let them go into the battle phase before activating Super Factorial. I do, of course, suspect the Evenly here, but I don't want to activate Super Factorial at the end of the main phase, because then my opponent can potentially continue the main and make plays. I'm going to commit them to using their battle phase here. So, gonna use the Super Fact to make the Laplacian. I'm even gonna do it, like, because you might ask, well, if you think they have Evenly, why wouldn't you just wait to use D-Save Worm on the Evenly? Why Super Fact? The reason for that is because there's actually multiple reasons. One, if they have call by, which they did, we can still use the D-Save Worm on the call by and then just eat the evenly with the Loplation negate. Of course, too, they might also just snipe. We might also rather snipe the evenly with the Loplation. This is particularly important if they end up having multiple evenlies, which you do always need to be thinking about. If you see your opponent go to battle phase, don't plan for one evenly. Think about what happens if they have a second one. Here, if they end up having a second one, I'm probably just going to have to sacrifice my field, except Terahertz. I'm going to keep that one. So we end up sniping a Diameter from them. But even if you don't snipe the evenly, and even if they had multiple evenlies and you didn't snipe it, that's still fine, because if they have multiple evenlies and you don't snipe one, you're probably just sniping their plays anyway, so. Alright, opponent's last 2 cards in hand are Cirque and Sigma. I am going to use the Veiler on the Circular, because I'm also planning on using the Imperm on whatever the follow-up is. At this point, it actually just doesn't even matter if it ends up being the Alumbrician or Splash Mage. Either way, I can Imperm it, and that is going to be the end of their combo line. They will not be able to make any more plays. Because they've already activated Sigma's effect, so they can't use it from the yard. And of course, they have nothing left in hand. Hitting the Diameter there was actually quite good. Again, even though we didn't snipe the evenly, if they had had the Diameter there, they could have normaled it and then brought something back and then just gone for a... They actually could have even set up an Alumbrician with an Omni Negate, which would have been very, very problematic for me to deal with here. So I'm actually quite glad I sniped the Diameter in this situation with the Loplation. So yeah, that's how to not only build a board through Disruption, but also most effectively use your Disruption to stop your opponent's plays. But... Alright, we have time for, I think, a couple more games. I do have 2 more left on the docket, so I think we're going to go ahead and see both of those here. Alright, got a game here against Voiceless Voice. You know, it's funny, over on Patreon, you know, we were looking at some... I think I talked about this already in another video, actually, but we were looking at OCG lists, and I actually saw that Voiceless Voice, buildable in Master Duel, is actually available, or not available, but topping OCG events currently. So yeah, Voiceless Voice is a deck that's not only currently good, but also, you know, will be good moving forward. So here I'm going to use the Imperm on the Diviner. Oh, I remembered why I actually saved this particular replay, because I wanted to talk a little bit about this. I'll wait for my opponent's turn 1 to play out here. After I Imperm the Diviner, they're going to go for the Skull Guardian, and then actually link the Diviner off for Almirage, and I was like, okay, anything else? Nope, they're going to pass there. So a lot of people, because I see, and I know a lot of people out there, maybe even watching this video, do this, because I see it happen with my opponents all the time on Ranked Ladder. I see so many people just shotgunning Maxi, only to later, like, Imperm the starter. And it's like, that's so counterproductive. If you have a hand with Maxi and Imperm, and as always as ever, I'm going to advertise my hand trap guide video, which is pinned to the top of my YouTube profile. So if you click Hexlex and go to my profile, then you'll see that, that video front and center. But I talk about this, right? If you have a hand where you have Maxi and a card like Imperm or Ash Blossom, as well as multiple plays in your hand, you should focus on using the Imperm to stop your opponent's plays, and then follow up with Maxi if they can play through the Imperm. However, if the other 3 cards in my hand, or not even other 3, let's say instead of Circular Defensor, I had, like, Multiplication and, I don't know, Call By, like a hand that doesn't have plays, then I would not use Imperm. I would focus on the Maxi to try to not only, of course, stop my opponent from doing too much, but also draw into live plays. It's like, there's so many people who say, like, oh, if you open Maxi, it doesn't matter because you already are just going to win that game. It's an auto-win card, but, like, there's so much nuance to playing these cards. It's so important. And a lot of people either don't know or aren't willing to acknowledge that, but it is true. So here we're going to lead with Cirque and Sigma. Opponent's going to call by the Sigma. I like to, if I have like Circular plus Defensor, like this exact scenario here, I like to lead with the play that doesn't commit your normal summon. So I like to lead with Circular here. So, plus, Circular is usually, you know, very good at baiting responses from the opponent, whether it's deserved or not. I see a lot of people Veiler Imperming or Ashing the Circular Search, and unless it was like that last duel where we had multiple negates, I really don't think that's worth it a lot of the time. Not that my opponent did it here, I just, something I see a lot when I'm playing this deck. Yeah, no, it's pretty obvious I'm able to just OTK from here, so opponent's just going to end up giving it to me. But again, even though that was a pretty short and simple duel, I think it was still very much worth showing, again, for the sake of just explaining when to use hand traps if you open multiple. It's gotta be the most common misplay I see in Master Duel. One, in my opinion, shotgunning Maxi on turn 1 before they've played a single card. That's always a misplay, IMO. But 2, especially, I see people out here shotgunning Maxi and then impriming the starter to stop plays. And it's like, cool, you just threw away your Maxi for nothing. So definitely pay attention to make sure that you're not doing something like that. All right, we do have one more duel to show off here. I said we had time for one more, and we do. So let's go ahead and see that. And this last game is going to be against Rescue Bas. It's been a hot minute since I've actually played against this deck. As always as ever, you know, even though this is one of the least popular meta-relevant decks on Master Duel Ladder, make no mistake, this is still probably just the third best deck in the game right now. Got a great going first hand here. I have so much gas that I'm actually going to use Small World to grab Ash Blossom. And this is why I think Small World is one of those exceptions where, because I know I say a lot with Maxi that if your opponent has no monsters on the field and it's main phase and they're not committing a special summon, you should not activate Maxi. However, if your opponent is activating Small World, that is one of the exceptions where I think it is okay to activate Maxi in response to that for this exact reason. It doesn't happen often, but I can tell you in every deck I've ever played Small World, whether it's this, whether it's like Synchron, whether it's... what is another deck that plays Small World? Long story short, any deck I've ever played Small World, I have at some point searched an Ash Blossom to counter Maxi because I already have plays in my hand. So it's not going to happen every time, but it happens like enough of the time that it's better to just be safe and chain the Maxi to Ash Blossom. Or to Small World, rather. Now, you'll notice here that I'm leaving the Almbertian on the field. That is because I made it with the Diameter and established the Omni Negate. So, it might be tempting to use the Almbertian as a material at some point if you've made it with Diameter on turn 1 and your opponent is just not having priority past them at all. But they could just be toggling off. People definitely do that, especially at upper ranks. Like, especially in like Master Rank and even Diamond, I see it happening all the time. I do it all the time in those ranks. So... really, hang on, I'm going to pause here because I'll talk about this in a moment. So really, I want to leave the Almbertian on the field through my turn to make sure my opponent isn't toggling and hiding like a Nibiru. Another thing that just happened that I have to point out specifically here is that in response to my opponent normal summoning Hydrant, you'll notice that I activated the Terahertz to send the Aggregator, right? Because we already have the D-Save Worm and the Diameter set up in the yard here. So I really like getting use out of Aggregator. Not always as soon as possible, but like, you never know if your opponent's going to have removal for like, you know, the Dark Fluid, and there's no reason to commit a Super Factorial just yet when we could Super Fact and eat a different card. So I'm going to use Aggregator now in response to the normal summon. Like I said during the deck profile, it's good to use against monsters that have the Spell Speed 1 activated effects. Now my opponent's committed their normal summon to a Hydrant that will no longer do anything for them. They're going to activate Alert. Again, I'm not going to actually end up chaining my D-Save Worm. And even when they call by the Ash Blossom, I'm still not chaining the D-Save Worm. Because when I see that, right, when I see them call by Ash Blossom here, my first thought isn't, whew, that's their only call by, now my Super Factorial will resolve. I'm assuming they gotta have a second call by in their hand. Because I'm just assuming that my opponent's playing well, right? And they're not going to just, you know, give up their Super Fact out so easily. They could be doing that, but not going to assume that. So here I'm going to Super Fact, and I'm doing it now because the Turbulence is on the field, of course, and I want to make sure that I'm doing it after the summon is successful, but before they have a chance to activate the effect to set for. Now I've set myself up so even if one of these last two cards is the second call by, I still have the D-Save Worm in the yard. So that's not gonna, yeah. The second call by doesn't do anything here. Now we eat the Turbulence and one of their card in hand, and we have an Omni Negate to their Link Kribo and one card in hand. So pretty easy W for us there. So all right, there we have it. Thanks as always for checking these duels out with me. I super appreciate you doing so. Let's go ahead and move now to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Just want to give you a huge thanks for watching all the way to the very end of the video. Believe it or not, that is actually one of the best ways that you can support the channel, is by watching the videos in their entirety. But there are many ways in which you can support the channel if you are so interested. The names that you're seeing on screen here, I gotta give an extra special thanks to, because these are people who have chosen to either become a member on YouTube, which if you're interested you can do as well via the join button next to the subscribe button down there, or have signed up over on Patreon and become members there. Link to that is going to be in the description below. Without the support that is being offered by, again, all the people that you're seeing on screen right here, I would not be able to take the time to dedicate to uploading daily YouTube videos. So thank you so very much. But there are also other ways you can support as well. Again, link to the description below. If you like my deck tracker that you'll see in a lot of my videos, the Untapped Companion, you can download that for free, and if you use my affiliate link down there, then that also goes a long way towards supporting the channel. That's again free. So is subscribing here on YouTube. That's also free and a huge way to support. You can also check out Twitch, once again linked in the description below. Following and subscribing over there will not only support as well, but also give you notifications of when I go live if you want to catch some of the live streams. But really, no matter how you choose to support, it all adds up and it all definitely means the world. So thank you, each and every one of you. For now, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out, but more than that, I'm hoping that you have a fantastic day.